Keith Smith chose to be in the courtroom through a closed-circuit TV rather than in person to hear his fate. The judge sentenced him to life plus 3 years for the stabbing death of his wife, Jacqueline. The only thing Smith said that could be heard clearly was, "I'm sorry." The family of Jacqueline Smith issued a statement saying they're pleased with the sentence. This didn't bring her back, but we're elated and we feel that definitely justice was served. Smith stabbed his wife Jacqueline to death back in December 2018. He told police it happened as he drove Jacqueline and his daughter, Valeria, home after celebrating his daughter's birthday. Smith told investigators, while stopped at the corner of East Chase and Valley Streets, Jacqueline handed a panhandling couple $10. He then claimed the panhandlers took his wife's necklace, stole her wallet, and stabbed her. But trial testimony indicates Jacqueline was asleep in the car at a different location when Smith stabbed her at least 5 times. Circuit Court Judge Jennifer Schiffer admonished Smith, calling the murder premeditated and willful. The victim had no way of knowing her husband would stab her over and over again. The victim was the definition of defenseless and vulnerable. She was asleep. He blamed vulnerable people, panhandlers, in exchange for a lighter prison sentence. Valeria Smith testified against her father. Also, police evidence included cell phone data and surveillance footage and Smith's inconsistent statements about the crime. Authorities caught Smith and his daughter as they tried to leave the country. Family members say they appreciate the hard work detectives put in the case. The evidence just stacked up against him. There was tremendous evidence and it all made perfect sense and it all pointed in one direction, and it was Keith. Family members say she loved her husband, Keith, and wanted their marriage to work. They said she gave all of her all to everything she did. Reporting live from the Mitchell Courthouse downtown, David.
Yeah, I just need to say this. When relationships are over, the gentlemen out there need to find a way to move on. I don't care if you've been married 20 years, 30 years, 5 years, it doesn't matter. What happened to the good old days where people just move on? Simple as that, move on. I don't care how you feel about it. I mean, it's like people don't even think about consequences anymore. They're just caught up in their feelings and they lash out and they harm somebody. I can't imagine the amount of people in prison right now who are just sitting there thinking, man, I got life. Or I got 30 years for an action that took a minute or 2 minutes to kill somebody, and you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison because you just couldn't move on? You think that's worth it? Now, Keith Smith, 55, was given the maximum sentence of life in prison for the murder of his wife, plus 3 years for a deadly weapon with intent to injure. His wife, Jacqueline Smith, was stabbed to death in 2018. Now, the sister, rest in peace to Jacqueline Smith. An Aberdeen proving ground engineer was fatally stabbed December 1st, 2018. Her husband called 911 that night, saying a panhandler had stabbed his wife. Her sister, Yazan Saab, expressed gratitude following the sentence announcement, noting that the verdict was due to the tremendous amount of evidence that stacked up against him. This didn't bring her back, but we were elated and feel that definitely justice was served. Saab, that's her sister, she said, and as I said on the record, the judge was very poignant and to the point. You could tell that she really reviewed this case thoroughly and made a decision that made us very happy. Jacqueline Smith was intelligent and witty, Saab said. She loved her mother, her 2 boys, who are both members of the U.S. Coast Guard, and she wanted her marriage to work with Keith, Saab said. Keith Smith initially told investigators that he had stopped his vehicle in the 1000 block of Valley Street and lowered the window on the passenger side of the vehicle so Jacqueline Smith could give $10 to a female panhandler, according to authorities. Mr. Smith claimed at the moment, a male also walked over to the passenger side of the vehicle where his wife sat, and the man asked Mr. Smith if he could thank his wife for giving the woman money. Official says Mr. Smith said he replied yes. He then claimed that the man began to stab his wife multiple times, grabbed her necklace and wallet from her lap, and then fled on foot with the female panhandler. I remember when this story came out, it had everybody believing that that's what happened. I mean, Mr. Smith and his daughter, they convinced everybody for a minute until all the facts came out. Now, Keith Smith and his daughter fled town after his wife's murder. They were arrested 3 months later near the U.S.-Mexico border, roughly 1,700 miles from Maryland. Now, at that point, investigators had obtained cell phone records and wiretap warrants that showed Smith had placed 2 phone calls for flight reservations and attempted to book one-way tickets to Cuba and Canada, officials said. He was trying to get up out of town. They caught his ass right before he got out of here, too. Now, he wasn't able to implement his initial escape plan because he did not have a U.S. passport. Man, he's an idiot. How do you think you're going to leave the country without getting a passport? So he wasn't able to get a passport to travel out of the country, according to authorities. Keith Smith had asked about the possibility of flying to the U.S. Virgin Islands, too. Investigators also noticed that Keith Smith had used an online search engine to inquire about whether he needed a passport to go to Jamaica, if there was a way to get to Mexico without going through one of the border crossings, according to authorities. Now, if he planned on killing her, I'm not sure if he was convicted of first-degree murder or not, because that first-degree murder is what premeditated. So if he premeditated this, why didn't he do his research beforehand to see what he needed after the fact, after he killed her, to get out of the country? You didn't know you needed a passport? Dumbass dude. Now, following the arrest near the U.S.-Mexico border, Valerie Smith admitted that the panhandler story was a hoax by Keith and that she witnessed he killed Jacqueline in Druid Hill Park, officials said. Valerie Smith pleaded guilty in September 2019 to accessory after the fact to first-degree murder. Testifying against her father, Valerie Smith recalled how the family was celebrating a belated birthday that night when her father took a detour to Druid Hill Park. At some point, she said, he slowed down and stabbed his wife. She said that her father was calm afterward, but his demeanor changed when he called 911. Yeah, that's all the act. She told the court that once her father discarded the murder weapon, a knife in the woods, he told her to lie to the police and say a panhandler stabbed his wife. A day or two after the murder, she said, her father went to his wife's workplace to get paperwork for her life insurance policy. He was the beneficiary. Wait a minute. Are you serious? So he waited a day or two after the murder and then went to the job. People that do this kind of stuff these people are stupid, man. They know the investigators are going to see if they have a life insurance policy, and that'll be, you're going to be the prime suspect because that's the motive right there. Now, an FBI agent also testified saying Google and cell phone data placed both Smith and his daughter in Druid Hill Park at the time of the murder. Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby said on Monday that Keith Smith deserved to spend the rest of his natural life in prison for his heinous and reprehensible actions. Keith Smith will now justly serve a life sentence in prison for violently stabbing his wife to death and then creating an elaborate cover-up plan to covertly blame panhandlers for his horrific attack, Mosby said. Today, the public can rest assured that justice was served in a case that manipulated the hearts and minds of our country. All right, that's the end of the story. I just wanted to give my input on this. I remember when this story first came out, and I guess he was convicted, a year ago, something like that. But this is a very interesting case, and I'll talk to you guys later. I'm out.